Definitely. We'll have it started. And I want to welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here. And I'm going to turn it over first to Commissioner Fletcher to kick us off, and then it'll go to Dr. Thompson and back to me. So, Commissioner, to you.
Yeah, we do it. Very good afternoon to everyone, and we do thank each of you for being here today. It is very powerful to have our leaders from across the Commonwealth's full education and workforce ecosystem, everything from early childhood, K-12, post-secondary, workforce partners, family, students, and policymakers, all in one space. But the work ahead of us requires all of us. And today we are focused on a central question. How do we ensure every learner develops the essential skills needed to succeed from early childhood through the workforce? And we know these skills: curiosity, communication, persistence, critical thinking, to mention many others. And this sounds very familiar to so many of you, from profile as a learner to the profile of a graduate at CPE or in our post secondary institutions. And they begin developing long before kindergarten. It is our responsibility to make sure they are intentionally built and strengthened across every stage of the system, not treated as separate efforts. And I am very thankful that our legislature did pass House Bill 257, which encourages districts to develop local accountability models in collaboration with community members that measures the type of skills that I just mentioned before. But at the same time, the world is changing quickly. I can't imagine being a student in this day and time with artificial intelligence. It's already reshaping how we learn and work. I talked to a teacher recently about they gave an assignment on a lab report and was getting ready to send it home, and then they fed it into AI and had AI feed it back to them what the answer was. And then she said, I have to change my entire lab report. Just that one simple, how do you change that so that you're flipping the classroom so you see more work in front of you as opposed to send those kind of things home. So again, artificial intelligence is completely changing. On a positive note, we have so many teachers are able to use artificial intelligence to develop very engaging lessons. You of course they're still the content expert, but they can develop these lesson plans and things of that nature, and then go through as the content expert and say, okay, these are the things I want to include. As the pedagogical expert, this is how I want to deliver them. So again, artificial intelligence is changing education, and it's probably changed education for students much longer before than what it did for us as educators, because they are the experts as they go through. But we also want to make sure we understand that we focus not just on what students know, but what they can do, how they think, adapt, and continue to learn. So just as we go through even the skills that we wanted before artificial intelligence was introduced, we realize how important that is, and then how do we also utilize that as we move forward. But keep in mind, as we consider this work, we must also keep in mind the outcomes of the 2026 legislative session. I think, Dr. Ellis, I think you have a update for us a little bit later in this agenda, and we need to think about how those decisions shape the opportunities ahead of us. Even at KDE, we're looking at ways of how can we build capacity for teachers to help make the job easier, but also too, how are you allowing students to utilize that? But then, of course, how's AI being used in the workforce? So we have to look at it on many different fronts from quote K-12 education. But now today is about alignment. It's across sectors, across expectations, and across the full learner journey. I appreciate your leadership, and also thank you for being here today as part of this important conversation. And at this time, I'll turn it over to my friend, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see everybody. It is April already, in late April. It's hard to believe time is going by this fast. And Commissioner, you look younger every day, and I don't look so young every day, and I'm feeling it. This legislative season was, in fact, a busy one. It was an interesting one. It was one that produced what it produced. We would have liked to have seen more money going into higher ed and P12. That didn't go, but we're glad we didn't get cuts. There were some good outcomes. And once again, Amanda and the crew will talk a little bit about that this afternoon. I do want to say, though, as the commissioner, I'm just jumping off what he's saying, it is important that we all understand that education is a prelude, hopefully, to a good economic development and a good workforce, Secretary Link. And to do that, we have to have connectivity. To do that, we have to know exactly what a student knows, and that student needs to know what she or he needs to know in order to get there. For us in higher education, it's a quality expectation. that we know that what we're giving them as a base is something that they can use throughout life. And that's what college is, right? Is getting that experience to use throughout life. This continuum then is important. It's important for us to know in higher education that we have a strong early childhood system. It's important to connect the profile of a graduate to the graduate profile, or profile of a learner to the graduate profile. It's important that we look at accountability on our end, whether it's a part of an accountability system or not, that we know that our students are getting what they need to know. And in my ideal world, we would have everybody either in high school or college have a work-based learning experience. Love to see every one of our majors with a capstone where they know how to use what they need to use. So that foundation we're talking about is important, not just for in the classroom, but for real world learning. Had a chance I just got back from San Diego, out there with 7,000 of our closest friends at the ASU GSB Summit. And, I was inundated the entire time about people talking about what we're doing in Kentucky. I was inundated with many big tech folk talking about AI. And obviously, we know AI, we talk about it as if it's some one thing monolithic, but it's multiple things. And how can we then prepare those students to do stuff that AI just won't take the job, but in fact enhances the experience that we're giving them in college in order to use AI to actually benefit this world? How do we, and we're going to be starting several task forces that look at how we can proactively put this in place for higher education and obviously connecting it to P12. So without going in far more detail than I need to in this introduction, I do want to say a couple of things to us. That, yeah, we're going into a new season of thinking about what it means for the learner. We're going into a new season of a learner. We're going into a new season of thinking about the importance of education and that value proposition, even differently than we talked about it 4 years ago. We are going into a new season of explaining and understanding what it means to develop programs for 10, 15, 20 years down the road when the world is changing every 3 weeks. We're going into a new season where we have to, as a group, remain consistent in being on the same page, and that is to make sure that all of what we do is student ready, whether it's at our K-12, P-12 system or it's in higher ed. The idea then, what is our roles? And how do we bring that to this group to actually enhance those policies, processes, and even maybe laws that helps us to do that? Where do we need to put our money when we have so little of it? How do we continue to have student success when student success now is taking on even a more rapid pace way of defining what it is? So it's our goal, I think, all of us on this group, is to use whatever position or power or place that we occupy to know how we can do it together even better. So for me, at Continuum, Amanda's taken on a little bit different look, even though the core mission stays the same, but it's taken a little bit different look about how do we create as a group, as a conglomerate, I'll even call us a cabal if we want to make sure that what we do is going in that direction, that every student will know what she or he has at the end, and every employer will want all of our students. I'll turn it back over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Commissioner and President Thompson. Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. And so, what we're going to do today, I'll go through our quick objectives, but it really could not have been a more perfect storm of a chain of events that's gone on. So, this continuum, you all got together in November and you brought up the importance of how the essential skills should be linked. And so we had that initial work between KDE and excuse me, and CPE, and that is listed online, but we wanted to go further. And there was a priority around including early childhood standards and how we really build the whole child, the whole student. We talk about that, but what does that really mean? And I think you're going to be able to see that today. So we're going to follow up with that. And we're going to be able to really explore, as you can see in the objectives, early childhood to workforce skill continuum, no pun intended, but there's not really a better word for it. around what we do with it, how we go forward with it, and how we put that into action. And you also talked about a lot in November about future ready, future focused, and AI. And Dr. Fletcher's right, and President Thompson, when they mention it, it's already changing. It's already maturing. It's already getting smarter, but we're still trying to wrap our heads around it. And I also went to a conference this week and spoke about being future ready. What does that look like? And listening to other campuses and other systems talk about it. And I thought, wow, our continuum conversation could not be any more relevant and timely because as we are embracing constant change at a rapid pace, and Dr. Fletcher, you're not wrong about the students and what they're experiencing. And if you all remember, Nathan from NCEE said babies that are born this year and small children will never know a world without AI. And that's the really smart AI. We've had Ask Jeeves and things for years that we were always impressed with, and it just gets better. So we are really lucky today to have a few guests with us. One of those, I'll introduce the panel here in a little bit. We also have Caroline, which I'll introduce her in a little bit to talk to us about AI and the education workforce, embracing it. And so you can see we're going to follow up with you briefly on the family and community engagement conversation we had last month. We have Jenny Hobson back to share back your feedback and how we can move forward with engaging families. It's not now is a can't be any more of an important time to make sure families and communities engage with our students and each other as they continue to grow and learn and be prepared for the workforce. We're going to be talking about the alignment, workforce skill alignment, AI. We'll have a great presentation and I hope a robust discussion from you as the continuum. And then at the end, we are going to have a little time to hit on some of the highlights of the legislation that passed. We will send this PowerPoint to you, but I will tell you we are not going to go in depth because when you combine KDE's statutes that relate, or excuse me, bills that relate to KDE, higher education and early childhood, it's 24 slides. We will not do that to you because we like you and we will not walk through them all, but we do have them available and we will be able to answer some questions and bring things to light. So at this time, I'm going to actually turn it to Jenny to follow up on the conversation we had initially. And Jenny, I'm going to let you take over. And Robin, if you'll share those slides, please. Or if Jenny's going to share her own, whichever works.
Thanks, Robin. Hey, so it is very good to be back with you all again after our conversation last month or last time when we talked about, what would it mean if families had all the information that they need to support their emerging adults in strong post-secondary access and attainment. And we talked about, well, what would it mean if our community-based organizations, our faith community, had what they needed to be able to support the families there on the ground. And so coming back to you today with some ideas that we want to get your feedback on, as we hope that this is a good way to move forward over the next year, thinking about family engagement in this higher education sphere. So we have there a list of objectives of things that we would like to begin work on. We want to understand what Kentucky families really know and perceive about post-secondary opportunities, access, and attainment. To sort of go beyond, me as poster child of a parent of an 18-year-old and a 23-year-old who pretty much daily has a reminder of, oh, I didn't know we were supposed to be doing that. Oh, I didn't know that was an opportunity. And I've been working in schools and family engagement for years and years. So really understand what Kentucky families perceive. Think about, okay, what are the needs? What are the barriers and assets related to family support for post-secondary? Identify the needs and opportunities for CBOs in promoting post-secondary with families. Think about the tools that we have within Gear Up Kentucky and how those might align or have gaps with a statewide approach. And finally, develop, pilot, and disseminate a practical toolkit for CBOs and faith communities to use to support families. So coming from the Gear Up world, I thought it might be helpful just to share a little bit about what it is that we do with families. So, I support the big work of how we think about families in Gear Up, and then we have local staff on the ground in 8 different districts who are doing these things with families every month. So we're developing monthly toolkits for schools to use to communicate with families around post-secondary opportunities. We have a great opportunity to do text messaging, particularly with middle school students' families. We are working with Futurity and Kentucky Advising Academy. And then we have something called Gear Up for Senior Year, Gear Up for Life, Gear Up for Adulting, where students go through experiences that really prepare them for adulthood. And there's a family piece that goes alongside of it so that families know how to extend those lessons at home. So if we think about what we might accomplish in the next year, and we really want to get your feedback on this in a few minutes, we would think to begin with focus groups and interviews to understand Kentucky families in that nothing about us without us mentality. And then to go from there to sort of draw out some themes and do a needs assessment. What do families and communities really need to support post-secondary access and messaging with families? Think about what we have with Gear Up and identify some gaps for a statewide strategy, and then develop some tools that we would disseminate about a year from now. As we think about the kinds of folks that we might need to have working in this group with us, we're thinking about families, because their voices are important, faith community, particularly maybe some youth group leaders. What do we hear from college and family engagement staff? The University of Kentucky, for example, has an entire office devoted to that. Community-based organization staff, these are the folks who work with families on the ground. K-12 staff, and then family engagement experts, which we are lucky enough to have a plethora of here in the state of Kentucky. We are ahead of the game. And then based on what Commissioner Fletcher and President Thompson were saying, I just want to add this idea for you to think about. Is there a space, even in thinking about post-secondary with families, for a presence from the early childhood community? That's the world I previously come from, and I know we are thinking about how do we start preparing little biddies for that successful and happy adult life. So at this point, we would really like to hear from you about your thoughts on this plan, and also hear from you, particularly in the chat. Who are the individuals in some of those categories that you think, hey, it would be great if we had so-and-so, and be specific, give us some names on this work group thinking about family support for post-secondary success.
Feel free to put things in the chat or unmute. I know you all are a wealth of knowledge. And Jenny, I think you have a heck of a start on the list. I really like the variety of folks and lived experiences and resources.
I'll jump in. I'm Katie Short Thompson. I'm president of Northern Kentucky University. It's good to see you all today. It's my first meeting, so jumping in quickly. What I would just say to you is that our university has a whole team of P through 12 outreach personnel who are focused on meeting with elementary and secondary students on campus for academic enrichment programs, but also going to their schools and working to train and teach their teachers to do their best work. So I think many of the universities are well equipped to meet you all where you'd like to be met. And just to give you an idea of the scale of the work that we do here at NKU, we have 14,000 youngsters on our campus each year. So, a lot of people, especially a lot of little kids, don't scare us. All right. So we're happy to help and partner however it makes sense.
Great, thank you. I was talking with one of your young scholars that comes there for high school yesterday, and so exciting to hear about that work.
Yeah, this is Phil Neal, Provost at KCTCS. I would say something similar to what Dr. Short Thompson just mentioned, with 16 colleges and 70 campuses located in just about every corner of Kentucky, and having over 35,000, 38,000 dual credit students from high school enrolled with us each year. I think it makes a lot of sense if we could work with you as well.
Great. And if you have someone specific in mind that you think, hey, that person would bring what we need to the table, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll give that some thought.
I don't know who this individual would be, but someone within the foster care system that looks at the transitional support for the kiddos that have been in the system and are either still in the system or transitioned out of it. There's a lot of unknown for the programs and assistance for them. And so someone who can speak specific to that population.
Jenny Sawyer from the University of Louisville. You know, the Family Scholar House has a full-time person who works just with transitioning foster youth because they have both a residential program and a non-residential program that services foster youth that are transitioning out of foster care. And I sit on that board, so I'd be more than happy to make that connection.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great. Well,
Thank
Jenny,
you.
thank you so much. I'm very excited about this work, and I knew you guys would already be a wealth of knowledge. Please continue to drop names or ideas in, or if you're on boards, just like Jenny brought that up and can bring that up to a board or a network. The power of this community on this call is the amount of folks you all know and the networking you can get your hands out to. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And Jenny, thank you for your leadership on this and partnership with Gear Up as well.
Amanda, I want to
Yeah.
jump in. Jenny, I think
Please.
you check in with our board member, CB Akins, who former pastor of Bracktown Baptist, who has BMW located there. They are really anxious and they work with a lot of K-12 kids, heavily with K-12 kids, getting churches involved and helping these kids who are under-resourced be successful. I would advise you to reach out to Dr. Akins and just talk with him about, because he's got tons of ideas of how to get the religious community more involved. He believes it's their duty. He believes this is an area where, this is his words, not mine, that the religious community is failing with our kids and should be heavily involved. So since he's on our board and since we have Gear Up under us, I think it makes total sense that you would spend just a few minutes talking with him.
That would be great.
Erin, on that note, there's a group in Louisville that is doing the same kind of work. They've just kicked it off. Jacqueline actually went to an event, I want to say in February. I will get you that name and contact there too.
Yeah, we have that. He has that too, because it was him and the BMW group that got them started in Louisville. So yeah, great connection. And this is where we can get a lot of big impact quick. So thank you, Susan, for bringing that up. You're absolutely right. So, and he'd like to see this spread throughout all of our communities. Anyway, Amanda, I just want to throw that in.
No, it's fantastic. And I really appreciate the different folks. And you're right, Reverend Akins will be all over this. And there are lots of people like him that really take this advocacy stand and really can rally communities to get behind students and families. So great suggestions. Keep them rolling. You guys are having such a good variety of folks that you're bringing in. I think it's fantastic. So thank you. And thank you, Jenny, for putting that together and really putting together our thoughts. If you also have other ideas or things that you think that were missed or that you feel like didn't get captured before, please put that in the chat so we can update that. But we're ready to get going on this work and really appreciate you challenging us to step in on this. So I'm going to move into our next piece.
I'll say goodbye to all of you.
Yes,
I'm going to
Jenny,
go
I'm
work
sorry.
on some family engagement tools, but thank you for having me here today. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Sorry about that, Jenny. I didn't let you say goodbye. So at this point, we're going to move into the follow-up and addition to where we started this work before. And so I want to introduce you, first of all, to Melissa Bell. She's going to kick us off first. But we're going to have a panel of from the Council on Post-Secondary, Dr. Melissa Bell. Lynn Baker will be representing our Governor's Office of Early Childhood with our early childhood standards. And Robert Meacham will be representing the Kentucky Department of Education. And I know Dr. Fletcher knows him well in the work that they are doing in his unit around the learner profile and all the work that's going on, or profile of a learner, excuse me, at the different K-12 schools. And then to moderate today is Sherilyn Bratcher. She is from GREC, also one of our members, and does a lot of work around advising, and huge supporter of this group and of students' futures and futurity. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to give us some context first on why this even matters. And this is not just about checking a box, but really looking broader at what we want to see our students become in addition to their academic knowledge. So Melissa, I'm going to turn it to you, and Robin's going to run your slides.
Thank you, Amanda. And yes, I wanted to point out, we kind of wanted to go back to the beginning of why are we focusing on skills and what do we mean by skills? And at the Council on Post-Secondary Education, when we talk about skills, we call them essential skills. Some people call them durable skills. Increasingly, you hear human skills, but it's really those skills that are transferable across careers. They're transferable across academic disciplines. And as Amanda said, content is still important. Academic discipline is still important. But these skills kind of underlie everything, and they kind of tie the educational experience together. If you want to go on to the next slide, please. Actually, you can keep on going there to the next one. So there's actually decades worth of research on skills and what skills are important, what civic skills are important, what employability skills are important. I just put together a few relatively recent reports for you. Our work on skills goes back to about 2018, and part of this part of the organizations and research that I highlight here helped us as we developed the Kentucky graduate profile. So the first thing that I want to point out here is the American Association of Colleges and Universities. They've done a lot of research on skills. The organization itself is really focused on skills needed to be an educated person. And in recent years, they've really focused on those skills and how they align to what employers want. And their last report, just a few months ago, actually, took a little broader view and found that employers place equal importance on higher education's contributions to workforce readiness and civic development. They found that employers value, and they think that higher ed is doing a good job at helping people engage in constructive dialogue, dialogue across differences, and kind of reaffirming things that we know. Employers really value experiential learning opportunities. Next slide, please. This is a page out of that report, and you can see it digs into some very specific skills. So the chart has skills like knowledge application, teamwork, communication, information literacy, critical thinking, and you can see the importance that employers place on these types of skills. Once again, we call them essential skills. Next slide. So the Aspen Institute, there was a 2025 report from that organization. It didn't look at specific skills, but rather the importance of skills in general. And what they found is that employers want clear evidence of what skills a job candidate has. They want proof of proficiency in those skills, and they want information about skills that is easy to interpret and they can trust. They also found that, as of 2025, that finding skilled talent was still a challenge for employers. So the bottom line is that they are looking for skills, and they want candidates who can demonstrate and articulate those skills in a job interview. Next, another organization that we work with a lot is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They've done a lot of work on this area. I don't know, a decade or so ago, they did a ton of focus groups. They brought together higher ed representatives, employers. They did a lot of research, literature, reviews, and what they came up with was 8 career competencies. And if you look very closely on that slide, you can see that they are looking at things like critical thinking, leadership, professionalism, teamwork as well. The next slide is a particular page out of their job outlook from 2025, and it shows the skills that employers find important. Once again, you're seeing critical thinking, problem solving, communication, teamwork, and these are the skills that very much align. If you think back a couple of slides, they align very well with the work from the AACNU, the American Association of Colleges and Universities. Another organization that we have worked with here in Kentucky is called QA Commons. This organization did research again. They came up with 8 essential employability qualities. And they have a process that individual academic programs can go through a certification process, basically. If they show that they've integrated these employability skills into the curriculum, if they can show that they provide career exploration and work-based learning to students, that they engage employers, and that they are very transparent about their student success data, these individual programs can get a QA Commons certification. Next slide. And so based on some of this national research, I wanted to highlight some of the work that we've done in Kentucky, and this is going to be a refresher, I know, for everyone. So here's the Kentucky graduate profile. It's a list of the 10 essential skills that every graduate should gain through their college experiences. And then once again, you think about the previous slides, these should look pretty familiar to everyone. The next slide is showing our alignment with these national frameworks. When we created the Kentucky graduate profile at the post-secondary level, we didn't start from scratch, but we took those national frameworks, we combined some skills, we refined some skills, but we're very much aligned with decades of previous research on what skills are important for the workplace and what are important for civic success as well. So this is a crosswalk between the graduate profile and those other frameworks. And then lastly is a crosswalk with other work in our state. So as part of our work with the CEC, staff members from CPE and KDE put together this crosswalk on how the 10 essential skills of the graduate profile align with the 6 domains or areas of the portrait of the learner at the K-12 level. So the bottom line is that a lot of organizations and a lot of employers are focused on skills. We have the K-12 framework that aligns very well with the post-secondary framework. That framework aligns with national frameworks, and we are building we're trying to build a seamless framework of learning throughout the Commonwealth. And that is it, Amanda.
Awesome. Any questions about that so far before we start with our panel? Excuse me.
I did want to add one thing. Since Kentucky was the first state in higher ed to do this, we also we worked with employers with QA Commons, and we have a self-assessment that has now become a national self-assessment to find out where programs at each of our universities and colleges are where they are at. What are the gaps and what are the needs? So Melissa, we use that with all of our institutions now, and it's quite an assessment. So now it's become a national framework that others are asking us to use around the country, and we have allowed them to do it. I should have actually put a charge on it, but I didn't. It's one of those items that has put Kentucky on the front end of this. We're the first state commissioner, I think, that's pretty well done a crosswalk and done an alignment between our P12 and higher ed groups to do this work. You may have known somebody else, but I don't know of any other states that have done this to this level so far.
I'm not aware of any, Dr. Thompson, about this to this level, especially. I know that there's a lot trying to jump on board, and to go back and emphasize the going back with the local accountability that's in now in statute. We have a lot of districts that, and this is building, this is growing. We're trying to help districts to build their own local accountability models, but they look at defenses of learning at different areas, like in fifth grade, eighth grade, and 12th grade, where they'll take different competencies, whether it be problem solving or critical thinking or communication, collaboration. And what is exactly, as far as a performance indicator at the fifth grade level, what does that look like? What does it look like as an eighth grader? And what does that look like as a senior that graduates? So we have several districts that are rich in this work, and then we have others that are getting into this work. And this is something that's a part of their local accountability model. So we have students that are demonstrating these essential, durable, soft skills, however you want to call them, these foundational skills that everyone needs to be successful. And then we have students in their senior year now that are doing defenses of learning based on these presentations and getting offered jobs straight out of high school. So again, to have that alignment from the P12 all the way into post-secondary is great work, and we really appreciate the partnership in doing that. Excited about where we are, but even more excited about where we can go from here.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate your input, both of you, and Melissa, for your presentation. I think it's a good time to pin our panel because a lot of folks may say, well, how does this relate to early childhood? But isn't that why we send our children? If you've sent your children before or you've done it at home, what you do in preschool and when it's even before they go to preschool in their early years of life. And so, Sherilyn, I'm going to turn it to you, and Melissa, you'll stay on. And I'd like to introduce you to our panel of four. Like I said before, it's Melissa. Robert is representing K-12, and Lynn is representing early childhood. So, Sherilyn, I'll turn it to you to start that conversation. Please dive in with your thoughts on chat, or when we get to the discussion, dig in, because I think a lot of you have a lot to say around this, or hopefully you will.
Hey, thank you so much. So when Dr. Ellis emailed me and asked me if I would do this, I was like, absolutely. I think all of us in our worlds are contributing to some of this. So I know at GREC, we've been helping our districts lead this work. And so I'm really excited to kind of hear from all of our panelists today. So thank you again for allowing me this opportunity. So we're actually going to start with Lynn, because I think sometimes we think of just kindergarten on up, but let's think about that early childhood also. So Lynn, your first question is, where do you see early childhood in the standards right now? Where do you see that they're actually building those skills that the students need? And then where are there some gaps that we can actually, improve on?
Yeah, so thank you for having me and asking that question. If you're not that familiar with early childhood, you might not even be familiar with the early childhood standards. So I've put a link in the chat so you can check those out. They're interactive on our website. You can also print them. But the purpose of the early childhood standards is to provide early care and education providers as well as parents with a guide for preparing children for success in school. And that starts in infancy all the way through 4 years of age. The standards outline a range of developmental abilities across the continuum, and they are actually aligned directly with the kindergarten academic standards and as well as the Head Start performance standards. They have 6 different developmental areas that the developmental continuum moves through, and looking at the essential skills, they really, if you take a look at the early childhood standards, you will see how they align directly with all of those essential skills. So communication, leadership, you might not think of those things in early childhood, but those are huge pieces of the early childhood standards. Approaches to learning is a huge area as well, and that is really how a children goes about learning. And so that it has a direct correlation directly to those essential skills. I would say the gaps that exist are really just in the messaging, and because the alignment is there. It's just in us recognizing it and making sure that we're building systems around it and the continuum around it. As far as skills go, there really are no gaps. They're perfectly aligned to those areas of the essential skills, and so it's just really the awareness and building programs in our services around that from preschool all the way up.
I can see your work really lining up with our first presenter, with Jenny, talking about that family engagement, like really kind of making those connections. So that's fantastic. And hopefully you threw her your name so that you can help with some of that work. No pressure. Robert, we're going to go to you next. So thinking about, because you're with KDE, and thinking about that, K-12 experience for a lot of our schools, from, the profile of a learner, profile of a graduate, where does a profile of a learner show up probably more clearly in most schools? And then where does it like really kind of struggle a little bit?
Well, thank you for having me again. Really excited for the work that's going on within the Division of Innovation, and just really a lot of some of the things, the points that I was hoping to make. Anytime I follow Dr. Fletcher, he's usually already made all of the great points that I was about to say. I'm like, man, that means we just really care about the same things. That's what I try and tell myself. So, but really, so Portrait of a Learner, what I'm really excited about is, we have 171 districts and two special schools in the state of Kentucky, and 154 of our districts have committed to, in some way, work with their community and a broad group of stakeholders to implement a portrait of a learner or portrait of a graduate, or whatever they want to call it in their districts, because it is such a locally driven success model. So where we see success, where it's showing up successful, is with districts that minus a mandate, said this is what's really important to our community. And once they brought in their community stakeholders to advise them on what the community envisions successful students, and once they heard community members, and when I say community members, the important thing is it not just family, but also business leaders and post-secondary leaders, because they're like our communities are asking their CTE folks from the community and technical world to come in and talk. They're asking the largest regional universities, their folks, to come in and be a part of that conversation, so that they can have a broad group of stakeholders. That's where it has been successful, is developing a portrait of a learner with that community, taking the time to go through the iteration of walking it down from a really broad, scope of these life skills, down to like what matters to our community here for students that not just graduate. And that's interesting that we call it Portrait of a Graduate and Portrait of a Learner. We see a lot of our communities transitioning to Portrait of a Learner because they love the idea of these are graduate skills, but they really want all of their learners, all the way down to their early childhood, to start building the skills that really are, that you can have outcomes and indicators that are, designed down to each grade level, that are going to fit within the portrait of a learner. And so where we're seeing success is communities that continue to iterate with their community, taking it back to their community 4 or 5 years later. We just had Newport Independent on a webinar, a lunch and learn yesterday, and they said, look, we realize that we've been through so much change. We're going back and we're bringing it back out, and we're saying, does this still matter to our community? And so that's where it's being successful. Where we're seeing challenges is where we've already talked about the application of knowledge and skills, and where we're seeing challenges is districts that don't yet see the they don't see the data that will align. Working on these portrait of a learner skills means higher, achievement. And so where we're seeing challenges is in really that top 10% of schools that I would say, and I just use that as just a basic percentage of, say, we're doing really well. So until we really see that high achievement match, there's just some feet dragging on, waiting on the data. The great part is we're in conversation at KDE with partners from around the country through our CCSSO collaboratives. Pearson Assessments is a part of our collaborative, and they put out a great white paper, and I'll share it. I'll pull it up because it just came to me, with Digital Promise, and they're talking about like building these quality assessments of how we assess these life ready skills, and so putting a national name in assessment to these things is really going to help, because that's going to bridge the gap to, if districts can understand how to assess these life ready skills, they'll feel more comfortable implementing them.
And
Yeah,
Robert, if I
yeah.
may add on to that, one of the things that every person in education will agree that students are so much more than a test score. But on the other hand, when they receive the label of being a blue school, and they're quote unquote successful, how are they making sure that their kids are being a good communicator, a good collaborator, and also too making sure, just like Robert, thank you, Robert, for pointing that out, putting those performance level indicators all the way down into kindergarten, first, second grade, so that kids have that. This is what a beginning communicator looks like. This is what a beginning collaborator looks like, all the way to that more experienced, that one that is career ready as a senior, or college ready as a senior, to be a communicator, collaborator, problem solver, a lifelong learner, things of that nature, things that we use in our profiles of a learner. But again, the things that the obstacle that we're having is, and we're seeing this to meld a little bit, is that we are very successful when it comes to our ACT, SAT scores. We're very successful and well, again, we want you to remain that, but make sure that we're also giving these kids to demonstrate their passions and what they're doing. And I'll use this one other example. I've talked several times to students about, as a superintendent, that they were very thankful for that AP score of a 5 or a 4 or 5. But you know what? My attendance might have been 88%, or 90, or less than what we would want. I'm just not seeing how this connects into what I'm going to do next sometimes. And so I think that's what's so important, that we're making this, with the profile of a learner, profile of a graduate, we're making this more relevant, more joyful for the kids as they move forward. So sorry, Robert, I wanted to add in onto that, but we are very much aligned. And let me tell you, the work that goes on in the Division of Innovation, top notch, put it against anybody in the country of what they're doing. So thank you so much. Don't tell Kelly Foster I said that.
I clipped it, and I will actually be sharing that with her.
And Commissioner, I would even add that one of the things that I've enjoyed when I get to go do like the profile of a learner or graduates, senior defenses, or even, eighth grade or fifth grade, I love the students being able to show and take that pride and making those connections. And so that has been so powerful, I think, because you can look at those test scores, and they can, they're excited when they get a medal, or, when they're distinguished, but for them to be able to use that profile of a learner or a graduate and really kind of show, and then look into that future part of what I'm going to do with everything, I think that's that added bonus of the value. And so
and
I'm
to add,
loving
and
what
to
we're
show how
doing.
they've grown, for
Hmm.
them to realize how much they've grown in these areas too. And this, not only this
Yes.
is how I've grown, but just like you said, where am I going with this? So again,
Hmm.
I'll turn it back over to the panel. I apologize. I
No,
get too
no, thank
excited
you.
about this. This is good, great work.
I love the discussion. Thank you. Melissa, you're next. Thinking about that post-secondary. And that, I think that's why, I like Portrait of a Learner, Portrait of a Graduate. I think for me personally, I like the learner, because I think we're constantly, even now, at my age, I'm still a learner. And so I think for me, I like that title better. But when I go to schools, I'm like, Portrait of a Learner, Portrait of a Graduate, which one are you? But when we're thinking about that for that post-secondary, how are you helping students connect what they're actually learning to that real world or that career context once they're actually on the campuses?
So what we're doing at CPE, because I don't work directly with students, only
Right.
our Gear Up students do, or our Gear Up staff does. What we're doing is we're providing a lot of faculty and staff development to our campuses,
Mhm.
so that they can help with this. One of the things that we're doing, and I'm sure Dr. Thompson can fill in a lot of the details on this, is we have a focus on work-based learning, because one of the best ways to show the context of work is to be in a work-based learning experience. And that doesn't just have to be a formal internship. You can have assignments that are based on real world examples. You can have people from industry come into classrooms and talk about what's important. So we really want to have a spectrum of work-based learning opportunities for students. Another thing that we're really focused on is transparency in learning and teaching. So we are helping faculty do, it's called the tilt method. So they're focusing on the skill. They're being very transparent about why that skill is important. And that helps the students eventually articulate that to employers. And it also helps students in the classroom because they understand what they're doing is tied to a skill and why that skill is important in the workplace. We're doing a lot of work on backwards design, so beginning with the end in mind. So this academic program, we want to have these skills embedded. By the end of it, the student should have these skills. How do we work backwards and make sure that each class is building upon one another and we have a very coherent curriculum? There's a lot of work on assignment design. Does the assignment measure the skill? Creating signature assignments that really kind of look at those 10 essential skills at the program level. And we're also focused at the co-curricular as well, because we know through student government, through organizations and many different types of co-curricular activities, students are getting experience in teamwork and in leadership. And we want to help students be able to capture all that. A great way to do that is through a portfolio or an e-portfolio, so that students, by the time that they enter the workforce, they have a body of work that they can show. And that goes back to one of the slides earlier that employers want to understand the skills, trust that will have proof of a proficiency. So you have this body of work that you can take to a job interview and say, here's what I've learned, here's how I applied it, and here's how it can be applied in your workplace.
Right. Oh, love that. Yeah. I think sometimes
I
that's a
want to,
disconnect.
I'm sorry. I
No,
want to
you
add
go
a little
ahead.
more to that after you get through. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, sir.
Okay, yeah, that's right. The process, you're talking about portrait of a learner, portrait of a graduate. Yeah, we're integrating this into the curriculum and pedagogy. So it is a learning paradigm, no doubt about it, be clear. But we wanted also to have a graduate outcome.
Mm.
We're dealing with two big things that we're trying to put on the table and come out with an outcome that makes sense. Right now, we have a lot of folk defining if college is important or not. And it doesn't matter if they have a degree or their kid's going to have a degree, but there's this rhetoric out there that says college, not everybody needs college or it isn't important. And all data are showing something different than that statement. So we're trying to do two things here. One is to increase the value in the minds of the public, true enough, but one of our main value proposition uh, partners will be employers. So we're putting employers in on the front end, helping us to say, how do we design programs, processes, and learning that they need in the end, not just the technical skills. So that's one of the pieces of outcome. The other is our student. If a student knows what he or she has learned and knows how to articulate that in the end to work with employers to get a job, then that's a quality argument to what we're doing. It also shows value too. So the two big outcome measures then, and I consider to be accountability, is around the idea then how do the student knows what she or he gained in college to sell, if you will, to the employer. And why would an employer want to come and hire every Kentucky graduate? Because they know what they got because they were a part of it. So it's putting employers in on the front end instead of the back end. But the last thing I will say is we talked a lot about soft skills inventory, soft skills assessment, and it's something that somebody gives in the end, say, oh yeah, they got it now. Let's give them a certificate and move on. But the idea of putting it in the threads, in the pedagogy, into the curriculum, measuring it at that authentic level, and then in the end to sum it up in saying that this person has gotten these sorts of skills. This is a new direction for us inside of higher education to tell people we know the value, we know the quality, and we're willing to measure it and show you, and we're willing to partner with you to do it. My last statement on this, we've incorporated this in all of our program approval and all of our program review processes. So it's very much a holistic way that we're thinking about doing this at a systematic level, not a systems level, Katie, be clear. I'm not talking about a system, but at a systematic level where everybody that graduates from a post-secondary institution in Kentucky will have that as a badge of honor, if you will, and as a way to show their quality.
Well, I think Dr. Thompson, the ones that I've been part of, been lucky enough to be helpful. I love that they have people from the community, businesses, part of those defenses so that they're hearing it early on. And so I love that is included, and so they're being able to see that this is what we're teaching them in the public sector, but also what we're hoping that they will continue. And so the students really we've actually had situations where students have left with job opportunities and or a working understanding of, you can do some internships and then go finish your college and then come back to us kind of thing. And so I've loved that combination that they've been able to build. Thank you for that. Dr. Ellis, I don't know how we're doing on time. Are we good, or can we do one more question?
We can do one more question, and then if
Yes.
any CEC members have comments or questions, put your hand up or put it in the chat, and we will definitely come to you. But yeah, if you don't mind to wrap up with one more question.
All right. So this one's one for all of you. So for Melissa, Robert, or Lynn, any or all, I'm thinking about one particular step that we could take together as a team, because this is a teamwork process. In the next year, what could we do to better align how we build and how we show these skills? So what could we do to kind of really make the value of this profile of a learner or graduate?
Can I be the first?
Absolutely.
So we're really excited about some new things that we are doing with post-secondary through the division. So we've had connection through at Murray State and at Eastern through their departments of ed, and really excited. Kind of how it came about was really organic, but through our Innovative Teacher Fellowship, we just kind of got connected, and so. We're really excited about actually EKU and Dr. Smith asked us to be maybe involved in the spring and the fall to talk to their pre-service teachers about the work and really give them just a better understanding. So, just so that from the K-12 perspective, how do we make this more about, not like a Google certification for a teacher that comes out of, pre-service to say, I am innovation certified, but really just like Dr. Thompson said, make it a part of we're doing what we do because it's the right thing. And that's what we're really excited about those next steps. That makes really good logical sense. This summer, we're doing vibrant learning collaboratives around the state, actually at 5 post-secondary sites, UK, Moorhead, Murray, Gateway, CTC, and University of the Cumberlands, to actually instruct teachers on what vibrant learning is, on what demonstrations of learning could look like, and we're having innovative teachers and co-op leaders and even post-secondary instructors are going to be presenting at those places to really, the most important thing is to really align our language to be speaking the same language as we are fighting that at so many times is we get into a space and all of a sudden we are saying the same thing. We're in the same universe. We're just on a different planet. So we're trying to get on the same planet, and we're really excited about the steps we're taking there.
I love that. Thank you so much. Lynn or Melissa?
I'll jump in and just say that intentionality piece that I was talking about, and really looking at how the alignment works and what the skills are, and making sure that's a part of our ongoing messaging across the continuum. And then, Amanda and I have talked for a while about looking at the essential skills of the entering kindergartner. And so how can we bring that into this work as well? And looking at those essential skills that were gained during early childhood. So I think intentionality is always a big word for me. And I think having this conversation is the first step toward that. So thank you.
And I will
Thank you.
just build on that and say, as much as we can, bring our partners into anything that we do. So for instance, when we were creating the levels of mastery for each of these 10 essential skills, we have a level of mastery of coming into college after 2 years of college and after 4 years of college. We had KDE as part of the conversations, and we had employers as part of the conversations. We had faculty, we had staff. And I think as many times as we can do that and have as many stakeholders at the table for things that we're already doing, but there could be additional things that we do need to be doing. But it is intentionality and also just getting the message out and making sure that we're all aligned in our thinking and our talking about these skills are important. No matter what career you want to go into, no matter what grade you're in, we're building the foundation of these skills throughout.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate you all allowing me to ask you some questions today and really kind of get us thinking more on this profile of a learner or graduate for Kentucky. Thank you. And Dr. Ellis, thank you so much for asking me to kind of ask these questions and facilitate this work today.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the panel. Any thoughts around this? Feel free to unmute or put in the chat. Is it like a hip hip hooray finally? Or I can't believe we're doing this? Or what stands out to you? Be boldly honest. That's what I love about this group. What are some additional questions that maybe come to mind that we need to think about or think through? I do think we're on the edge, on cutting edge when we are really combining early childhood all the way through higher education in alignment with employer expectations. I know Beth Hargis and I have been texting back and forth like, yay, like this makes sense. I would love to hear maybe from Alisher or anybody from the workforce. Like, is this giving you hope of really bringing a stronger connection? Would just love to hear your thoughts, opinions, rants, whichever you prefer.
Hey, Amanda, can I go
Yeah,
really?
please.
Hey, everyone. Obviously, great conversation. Exactly what our employers are seeking. Alice Shear from the Kentucky Workforce Innovation Board. I did want to throw a challenge out there to you all. Melissa, what you were talking about, like how graduates can go into with their products or artifacts, demonstrate these things. And you guys started this conversation with AI and technology. I just wonder, how can we package all these skills that can be verified that employers can, just understand, not have to dig through and like, well, I guess they did learn communication by doing this internship, right? I think this is in line of like digital wallets and LERs, right? But I
Mhm.
think the technology and education is kind of moving in that direction. And we have so many businesses and all of them want communication and critical thinking. So how do we truly demonstrate that? So just want to throw a challenge out there.
And I'd love to answer that challenge because you're absolutely right. We have to create an enhanced yeah, digital wallet, but an enhanced, come on, give me the,
Like an
Transcript.
infrastructure.
no, yeah, the outcome we get when we ask for, my mind just went bad. I'm dead. I need to sleep after the session. But a transcript, I'll get it out sooner or later. An enhanced transcript that has these items on there, more than just the badge, but going in great detail. I mean, it's about time we've gotten to that point. Technology should be on our team now, not working against us, right? So, but you're absolutely right, Alisher, that this is our next step and it has to be done. And all of our CRMs, ERPs, all those things can do this. So I would hope we're going to be there sooner rather than later in the next year or two.
Amanda, I'd like to jump in and just offer
Yeah.
a few thoughts. I am so proud of this work that we have done in Kentucky. And Dr. Thompson, I know we were the first. I don't know if we're still the only ones tackling this, but it's so exciting to understand what can happen for our learners. But we have such an amazing opportunity to shout to the world, but certainly to our industry and to our elected officials, I, what we have done here and what we are completing. I've worked in multiple states in K-12 and higher education. I have never seen industry come to the table and say, we need X, Y, and Z, and then see such a large scale coordinated effort across an entire education ecosystem respond in a coordinated, measurable way. I think a marketing effort on this to make sure that the world knows this, inside and outside Kentucky, it would be a missed opportunity if we didn't, because this is something special.
I ditto that big time. And yes, we are the first, and so far, holistically, the only. I mean, and that's the interesting piece. We need to get, I'm talking around the country, as you all know, Dr. Neal, about this stuff, but we have not marketed it yet at all. And when we think of this SWAT group, Commissioner and Secretary Link's on, Ryan Quarles, myself, Chamber President, that alone is getting enough attention that we're talking about that. But how do we, I think this is a good point for this group to understand. Even this group itself is so unique. That's why we win the best P20 thing every year, because what we're doing here is more than just having a committee. It's something big. So how do we package this? And I think many of us on this line, we should be charged with doing this, by the way. How do we package this in such a manner that shows everybody where we're going? Because let me tell you, we're going to have folk, if we're going to keep up our economy, we're going to have people come to our state and stay in our state to help us do this. As Secretary Link can tell you, as President Short Thompson can tell you, that it's going to take a different kind of workforce. And yes, we want to educate all of our Kentucky students without a doubt, but we're going to have a few from out of state to join with us to keep Kentucky at this head. And I think we do need to market it somehow.
To
Yeah.
add to
Any
that,
other?
we
Yeah.
have gotten a lot of it, just like Dr. Thompson saying. Even in our K-12 space, we've gotten a lot of national attention. We were invited to be, and we've been a part of the High School Transformation Network, which includes about 6 states. And some of the things we're looking at is, can we change what a high school transcript looks like? What exactly does competency-based education really look like? Performance-based assessments, things of that nature. Again, going back to local accountability, this I can't emphasize how big of a first step, or I'm sorry, another step that this was when it comes to House Bill 257. But for us, getting that national recognition, even with Dr. Hargis, and looking how we're doing career exploration in middle schools with some other states. So some national recognition is happening, but because Kentucky's leading the way in so many different ways. So very excited about the work, but most importantly, it's going to benefit our students tremendously as we move forward. No matter if there's no national recognition whatsoever, as we meet the needs of our students and making sure that they're prepared, we as a Commonwealth are going to be very successful. And it's all about our kids and what we're making a better future for them.
That's right.
Amanda?
So, yes.
I would like to add just a little plug for Futurity, that Futurity right now is really the infrastructure that we're able to do all of that with. So right now, we already have the website built. We have thousands of students from all over the state going to it to explore Kentucky careers. And then eventually we want it to be the place where students can also interact with it, enter information such as the careers that they want, so we have pipeline data. And then the next step, of course, would be to connect those students to the workforce. And all of that can be done in Futurity and marketed in such a way that all Kentuckians have access to it like they already do. And I really feel like this is the future, and Futurity is the place that we make that happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's getting a ton of recognition because people cannot figure out how we came together collectively to share this data in a user-friendly way. And it's just getting started. So I will have to say, you all have teed up the next conversation so beautifully. Like I couldn't have even paid you to do it, especially you, Alisher, and you didn't even know. But this is the beauty of it. And Phil, to your point, this is very unique. And for these folks to come to the table, and Robert said, we don't always talk the same language, and we're kind of in the same universe, but on different planets. I think we're really starting to intentionally align and be able to communicate. And that's why you're starting to see these things really show up as consistent priorities. But if we were going to stick our heads in the sand and say that was good enough, then we would stop there. But you all know, and that the buzzword around the whole nation, around the world right now is artificial intelligence, right? So Alistair brought it up. We talked about digital wallets. We've talked about efficiencies. We've talked about how students learn, how they're assessed. We talked about how teachers and instructors have to use it, employers, how it can benefit. This is, I know Dr. Thompson was at a national conference last week. I was this week. That's a technology conference that represented 25 countries, and the number one conversation was around AI. And the beauty of that is that when it got down to it, they were like, what do we need to do with this? And we're going to hear from Caroline here in just a minute to school us on it, on the looking at it and thinking about it, is it got back to the human. How are we preparing young people and people coming, trying to skill up and enter this workforce to be good stewards of this incredible tool that we have, and how the technology is moving so quickly? How do we build individual skills and dispositions to handle it? Because it's a lot. Students have a lot of opportunities and a lot of options, and with that comes great responsibility and a whole new skill set that many of us are learning in real time, although the students are learning it faster at all ages. They did a whole documentary recently on hackers that were under the age of 14 that are being caught by the federal agents, and the students say, I'm glad I got caught, because they figured it out so fast. And so how do we embrace this and build these essential skills, these durable skills, to really equip our students from the youngest age all the way to where they enter the workforce, that our employers are not only using AI, but they have employees who are savvy and on being good stewards of that, and having a knowledge of how to be nimble in this ever-changing world. And so I think you pushed on that, because that's the beauty of today's conversation. You have the human side and the development, but we also have the very fast technology growth, and we've got to be savvy on both, and we can't let one forgo the other. And so I'm going to turn it over to Caroline. Let me make sure I get your last name right, Caroline. Caroline Leach. She's from UK, and she is actually going to be sharing with us different things to think about with artificial intelligence. And we always say we want to talk about it, and then I go, well, what about it do you want to talk about? And people are like, I don't really know because it's so big. So we're going to go with her to start the conversation. And Caroline, we are so glad you joined us today. She does come from the UK Center for Applied Artificial Intelligence. And so she's going to be leading us through understanding the implications of AI on education and workforce. So Caroline, welcome. We're thrilled to have you.
Good afternoon. Yes, thank you all so much for having me today. I'm really excited. Let's see, are you all able to see that slide deck there that I just shared?
Yes, we can see it now.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for having me today. My name is Caroline Leach. I'm honored to be here and to have this opportunity as a student at the University of Kentucky. Today, I'll be giving a brief presentation on AI, what it is, how it learns, and discussing a few case studies. To start off a little bit about me, I'm joining you all as someone who worked for a few years in the education technology space. I'm someone who considers myself a lifelong learner. And like I mentioned, I'm a student at the University of Kentucky in the data science graduate program. I've had the opportunity to do some work within the Institute for Biomedical Informatics across the full life cycle of AI projects. And recently I've been part of an NSF-funded initiative through the NAIR pilot, where I get to travel around the state facilitating workshops on AI and AI-enabled research. But what is AI? My goal is for you all to leave with a stronger baseline understanding of this, and of course, support your continued conversations on the topic. It's evolving, it's exciting, so I know that there are lots of things to discuss. As you know, and I think the reason I'm here joining you today, AI is booming. If you scan the headlines over the last year or even the last month, you'll find examples of major organizations integrating AI, universities rolling out AI task forces, and it seems like every sector from healthcare to finance are restructuring workflows around AI-driven insights. It's clear that AI is here and making waves in how we work, how we learn, and more. I know the topic of your meeting today focused a lot on essential skills, and I think a lot of people could argue that AI experience or familiarity is becoming an advantageous skill for people to have. But again, what is AI? I like this definition out of Stanford. It says AI is a branch of computer science focused on creating systems capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. AI can scale your data, your processes, your insights. AI really is an amplifier. But artificial intelligence isn't a single technology or a magic algorithm. It's more of a broad category, a collection of approaches that allow machines to do things like understand language, recognize patterns, dissect images, or make predictions. AI can increase efficiency, and increased efficiency often creates opportunity. AI can feel very new, I think, but it's actually been around for a while. Back in the 50s, AI existed. It just relied on explicit human-defined rules-based logic. The framework came from Alan Turing in 1950. He famously asked, "Can machines think?" and proposed the Turing test to evaluate a machine's ability to simulate intelligent behavior. This really was the foundation for the field of AI long before the hardware existed to realize it. Then came machine learning, broadly used since the 90s. Machine learning moved us beyond having to write every single rule, enabling machines to learn directly from data. Today, things like deep learning and neural networks allow for the complex interpretations that we see in generative AI, like ChatGPT. So AI didn't just appear a few years ago, but I think something that did change is accessibility. The tools evolved, the models got bigger, the infrastructure got faster. And as we all know, new things seem to be coming out every week. The field of AI is always changing and growing, but one thing that has stayed constant is that these systems depend on data. Most of today's AI systems are what we call narrow AI, specialized systems trained to perform specific tasks very well, like identifying if an arrhythmia is present, or automating quality control on an assembly line, or carrying out a text-based conversation, even recommending what you should watch on Netflix. In some cases, these systems can outperform human experts. For example, a paper published in 2024 compared the performance of commercial AI models and radiologists on a specific task, detecting lung nodules in chest x-rays. Four of the seven algorithms tested outperformed the humans, but that model, which performs really well at detecting lung nodules, wouldn't know how to identify crop diseases. All it knows are the data features that make a certain response more or less likely to be rewarded as correct based on its training data. That said, the multimodal systems we see today are expanding the definition of narrow with good prompting. Tools like Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot can help bring your idea to fruition. But that is still your idea. AI is absolutely accelerating what's possible, but I don't think it is replacing the expertise behind it. Take this example from the Harvard Business School, which evaluated consultants' work with and without AI tools. Researchers found it was a great companion for ideation, writing copy, drafting emails. However, it fell short in real strategy development and complex knowledge work. I think a lot of people might describe AI as mysterious or a sort of black box. You ask a question or feed it some data and an answer pops out. But how? AI is not magic. The magic is math, whether we're talking about applications in healthcare or the classroom or someone's self-driving Tesla. or just a general chatbot, all AI systems are doing the same things. Making sense of data, responding to variability, and automating effort to improve outcomes. I think it's important to kind of take a look under the hood and explore how AI actually learns. That can help us understand AI a bit better. So I'll touch on three core learning methods here. There are more, but these are the main ones. Supervised learning means there's an answer key. So the model learns from labeled examples. For instance, a spreadsheet of college applicants that tracks which students were ultimately accepted to the institution. There's also unsupervised learning where there are no labels. So the model has to identify clusters or patterns in data without being told what to look for. For example, organizing customers into segments like loyalists or discount seekers or infrequent shoppers based on their past purchase history. There's also reinforcement learning, which is more trial and error than labeled or unlabeled. Think of a simulation of a self-driving car. The model would be penalized for running a red light, but over time, across thousands of simulated scenarios, it would learn that it's rewarded when it stops at the red light until it turns green and then slowly accelerates. None of these methods are better than the other. It really just depends on what you're doing and what data you have. I think the key takeaway here is that data really is key. If you understand which learning method was used and what data was fed into it, that, mysterious AI becomes a bit more transparent. An AI system is a direct reflection of the data that it was trained on. If you work with data, you may have heard the saying garbage in, garbage out. Basically, this means that bad data will produce a bad model. So let's look at a couple of case studies. The first one I have for you here is about Amazon. They built an AI recruiting tool and trained it on years of resumes submitted to the company. The problem, most of those resumes came from men, and many of the hires were men. This introduced some class imbalance and bias in their data. The model learned that male candidates were preferable. It threw out resumes that included the word women's, like as in women's lacrosse captain, or resumes from graduates of women's colleges. Amazon scrapped the project entirely. Another case study, this time in the agriculture domain, a paper published in 2016 describes an AI model built to detect crop diseases from photos of plant leaves. The model was trained on a publicly available data set of over 50,000 images that spanned a variety of both crop species and diseases. When that model was tested on a held out evaluation subset, the model performed remarkably well. It achieved 99% accuracy. But that performance collapsed, when the model was tested on images collected outside of its training conditions, which all of the training examples were in laboratory settings with clear backgrounds and good lighting. In real agricultural settings with different lighting or varied backgrounds, the model's accuracy dropped to about 31%. The model hadn't really learned how to diagnose crop diseases. It had learned the look of a controlled lab photo, and it used that as a shortcut to the right answer. If they deployed that model outside of its controlled test scenario, for example, through like an app that a farmer could install on his phone, it wouldn't work. I think both of these case studies illustrate something important. AI-ready data is about more than just volume or well-organized spreadsheets. It requires representational integrity. A good model will be the result of data that is representative of the population being served. clearly defined so that every field is understood and targeted towards a specific question or task. There is no such thing as the best data set or the best AI system, only data that is fit for purpose. A couple of questions to think about here before you start building things or using things yourself. You might ask, what specific problem am I trying to solve? Who is this for? What is the data actually showing? For instance, a nutrition model might learn that people who eat kale are healthy, but it probably isn't actually learning about the biological properties of kale. It's likely learning about a demographic. I think that demographic maybe works out more or could be in a higher income bracket. And maybe that's the real thing to consider rather than their kale intake. Another quick example, say we want to identify a rare disease that occurs in 1% of the population. If the model predicted no disease for everyone, it would technically be 99% accurate, but it would also be useless. A false negative, which is a missed diagnosis, has a high cost compared to a false positive, which may flag an unnecessary follow-up visit. And when I say cost there, I don't necessarily mean money, I mean the outcomes that are at stake. So, how do we move from these concepts that I've touched on to real applications? From my own experience in the AI field, I know that it happens one step at a time. Experimentation and proving concepts is really important. Like data, which I've been discussing, domain expertise is a critical ingredient in a successful AI system. Data can be used to give you the answer, but only a subject matter expert can tell you if that answer is meaningful. AI is an amplifier, but I think that domain expertise is the signal. All of this comes together through a clearly defined scope. Distinguishing must-have needs from nice-to-have wants is important, not just in the field of AI. Getting that clarity can be really valuable because sometimes you'll realize you don't even need to build an AI tool from scratch. There are a lot of opportunities to layer on top of or tweak existing foundational systems, which can get you 90% of the way there. And that's a good use of resources as well. From previous talks I've given or presentations that I've attended, I absolutely want to recognize and acknowledge the ethics of AI, whether it's the environmental aspects, the workforce impacts, or cybersecurity concerns. These things really matter and deserve attention. While I do not have the answers for you, I can just share a personal perspective. Human in the loop feedback is essential both in development and during deployment. I think AI is most impactful when human experts decide what questions to ask, how to interpret results, and what actions to take. And again, ethics absolutely has to be part of conversations. I know it's important. To circle back to something I said at the beginning, I was part of a grant initiative that's taken me across the major geographic regions of our state recently. And at all of these events, there are common questions and sentiments that I've noticed, whether they're a researcher or a student like me or an educator, everyone is navigating this AI landscape together. And while I can't offer any guidance on rules or advice on how things should work, I do just want to, again, validate that we're all adapting to this. And I think people are really interested in having discussions on this topic. We are all students in the AI landscape, and I think that is nice. And that closes me out. Just a quick overview to hopefully share some knowledge. Thank you all for your time today, for inviting me to attend, Dr. Ellis and Dr. Hebert. I really appreciate it. I hope that all of you listening learned something or feel a little bit more equipped to continue learning about it independently. So thank you all.
Thank you, Caroline, so much. I'd love to hear your all's thoughts on what you think, questions you may have for Caroline, and what stood out to you. And Macy, I saw that you popped in, and a student perspective, I always welcome, as you know, before you graduate college. But would love to see your all's questions and things that you may have for her or things that stood out. Please unmute and share or put it in the chat. Caroline, this is not a shy group, I promise.
If I could, Amanda, I just want to
Yeah.
first thank Caroline. We've been working with the Center of Applied Artificial Intelligence through the CPE, for a while now, and what they've really brought to the table is kind of an expertise on how to operationalize AI. I think we talk about it a lot from a high level or maybe an aspirational level, but we've really started to get into it from a strategic level, and CAAI has really helped with that conversation, especially around the work we're doing with our inference server, that I think can really come in handy. So just wanted to say thanks to Caroline and the work that they do over there at CAI.
And I will echo what Travis just said because we've actually been working very closely with Caroline and the team at CAAI with Futurity the last several weeks to try to illustrate what an AI model of Futurity could look like. So, and that means a large language model of a student saying, going to Futurity and rather like clicking through the Futurity Future Finder and taking a career quiz, it could instantly go to a chat bot where you could enter in who you are, what you're interested in, and and then it would respond with all of the information that is already in the background of Futurity. If I could get sharing privileges, I can share that, but I don't have them right now.
Try again.
So, yes. So, this is what it looks like. This is just a brief example, but imagine you're a freshman high school student in Bowling Green and somebody tells you about Futurity and you go to the website and you immediately get a chat that says, "What are you interested in?" And the person says, "I want to do something with computers. What are my options?" Immediately, the AI searches Futurity and it looks for the different computer related careers. And then it asks you, where are
Jessica,
you?
are you sharing something with us? We don't
Yes.
see it if you are.
Oh, I thought it.
We see you though, and that's cool.
How about now?
Yeah.
Almost. There we go. Now we see it.
Okay. So yes, this is, it looks very basic. It looks exactly like if you get an automated chat from a car dealership trying to sell you a car. It looks a lot like this, but it is really like pinging all of the back end data that is in Futurity right now. So like if you scroll down, you'll see the different pay levels for software developers, cybersecurity analysts. Like it is automatically looking at Future Finder saying, here are some careers that match what you're interested in. And then because it also says, where are you in Kentucky? And the person identified Warren County. It also says, great. In Warren County, you can do the career and technical education program at Warren Central High School. So you can get a head start while you're still in high school. And like it just gives students very tangible Kentucky specific data, which is the core of what Futurity is now. But I think as we move into this AI landscape, it's going to look even easier and even more accessible to them that within asking two questions, they can have this level of data and an answer. So as I said, this is just a demo. but we're really excited to be working with Caroline and the team at CAAI to help us navigate what this is going to look like. And hopefully we'll be able to deploy it, sometime soon. I can't put a date on it, but we're just so thrilled that between the partnership with UK and the work that we're doing with our inference service servers, all of this is going to be possible. So just wanted to share a little look at the future.
Amanda, I want to jump in fast. Thank Caroline and thanks my team. You've heard a lot about AI and higher education, but it's been around the ethics piece. How do we keep people from cheating on papers and all that kind of stuff? But we're getting ready. We're going to focus in higher ed in Kentucky on the proactive side of it and all these different levels. So as we start putting together these task force, we already got some going, but we're going to focus on how do we make sure that the student is getting the best learning possible out of this, and how do we make sure that we're cutting edge, if you will, toward this learning paradigm in Kentucky as a whole. So you'll be hearing a lot from us in the next several months around all of these. So I said that in the beginning salvo. I just thought I'd bring it back.
Yeah. What else? What are your other thoughts?
Can I chime in, Amanda?
Yeah.
Caroline, thank you for that presentation. The KWIB, we had a little task force on AI. One of the draft recommendations that came out is to have sort of like industry hackathons in a way, right? I think Dr. Neal, your group at KCTCS, they were interested in that, just of the 16 colleges. How can we engage students in solving real world business problems? GE volunteered to be part of this, as an opportunity. But, so many businesses across 120 counties are small and medium sized that know this is an opportunity, but how to use it and how to better demonstrate vibrant learning and work-based learning than engaging students in real world solutions building. So that's just an idea to also consider to kind of blend education and AI and industry.
Yeah, I love it. What else? Is there anything you get excited about or you have angst about when you hear what Caroline was sharing or some of the examples she gave you?
Amanda, I wanted to just pop in and ask a question. We heard a whole lot about students developing all these different skills and the ones that are most important to different industries, and then how the employers really want to know and have evidence of whether or not people actually have those skills. And I just wondered if Caroline could give any examples of how AI is working in that space, like the connection between prospective employees and employers and that whole skill set continuum.
Sure. As a student, I am learning AI and exploring these things independently just because I have an interest in this field. But as far as connecting the pieces, I think that is a really, valuable thing that you all are discussing. And I don't know that I have any recommendations or examples that I can pull from the top of my head, but I think that AI in a lot of ways is a tool, like everything else is a tool, and so I'm sure that there are ways that it can be applied to help solve those problems or to be included as skills that are important to employers, things like that. But I appreciate your question. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to share some thoughts and see if there's any response to it. First of all, Caroline, what I thought was super interesting is the more you talked about AI, the more you talked about the importance of human thinking and acting and engaging. So it's not a replacement of humans, but it really is engaging those higher level thinking skills and things that we need to be equipped with, but really have the skill to do that AI cannot do. Like it's not going to be void of human. And so this week, I got to hear a few campus presidents talk about how they're embracing AI, and one of them is using it for enrollment management. And what they said, how she described it was she used AI as a new employee to do paperwork and then rewrote a lot of job descriptions for her staff to be able to engage more with the students and do less of the data entry and less of the paperwork that really consumes so much of their time, and that they treated AI like an employee, and then they wanted it to be transparent, or excuse me, invisible to the student body, but the reaction or the result of that would be more human interaction with the students. And one described it as, I actually get to do what I
I think Amanda is hung up, right?
Yes, I think so.
Robin, you may want to jump in until she gets back. Well, it looks like Robin is hung up too, so I guess it's me. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I want to say something about what Amanda was saying.
Okay.
I do think, Caroline, you did an excellent job. And I learned a little bit more about how to articulate to staff how we embrace AI and how we use AI and removing some of that fear. Because as we continue to use more AI in our work, that's what I say, is that it allows us to do more value added work. It allows us to have more direct student interaction. But there is some fear, and we do need an education piece to help our staff understand how these are tools that can use us and can actually allow us to do the things that we love to do, right? And the things that got us into working in our professions.
Hey, Gina, can I jump on and state something? Probably I'm restating, but I want to be clear. We talk a lot about the learning piece. We talk a lot about with our students, but there is a huge gap, and somewhat, people are scared, right? So how do we do the professional development that's needed to help us to do the work that needs to be done, right? On the campus, in addition to the learning process. So, I mean, we're going to have to triple down, Commissioner, both in P12 and higher ed with this area. And we think about a lot of professional development time and money and effort spent. This is an area we still have to grow in and become more complete in how we are preparing our folk on our campuses to best utilize AI. So, Caroline, we'd appreciate any knowledge you have to offer there. Amanda and Robin, you all disappeared, and once again, I came in like Superman. I mean,
Thank goodness. Well,
so
blame our office internet that is failing us multiple times today.
that's Wayne Fielder. He needs to come in and take care of it more.
I'm going to make,
Sorry,
I'm going to add on
my
two
name was
comments
going to
there.
pop up.
There we go. I'm going to add two comments here. You know, I get questions from teachers a lot, will we be replaced by AI? And I respond back to them in the same way I'd respond back to anyone in any career. You're not going to be replaced by AI, but you may be replaced by someone who can effectively use AI. So again, that I think that's so true. Then the other thing, I think the task for us is to make sure, one, we have to help our students to ethically use AI, whether to produce presentations, writing projects, whatever, to ethically use it. Then second of all, how do you actually program or write AI? So that's the other thing that we're challenged with. How do you actually do the computer science aspect of it? And then the third part from Dr. Hargis I think would echo this too, is how is this being used in career pathways, in a career out there? So we really have a task of approaching AI in three different ways. One, of course, as I said before, is how do we ethically use it for our students and also for our teachers, but also too, second, we want to make sure that we're teaching students how to program it, how to actually develop AI. And then third, how are we going to use this in the workplace? Because at the end of the day, and I stand by this, I don't think we're going to be replaced by AI, but we can be replaced by someone who effectively uses AI.
I agree. Yeah, so I really appreciate this conversation. I think it's really just starting, and I really appreciate the challenges. And Caroline, I think you gave us some great things to think about. that may come off as simple, but they're deep, and there's some next step pieces in there. So I would love for you to put in the chat or speak up on, and I'll send this out in email, but I usually do better when you guys are online because you're busy people. Where do you want to see this go? Where would you like us to explore more? What do you want to learn more about? Because I think even when we talked about Alisher pushing us on the essential skills of how do we get that in an employer friendly way that is not more onerous on the employer to go, well, I don't know if you really can do those things. I don't know that. How do we validate these things? How do we know what you can do? And efficiencies are really important, but validation and quality are also pieces there. We've heard about ethics. We've heard about engagement. I would love for you to drop in the chat, or if you want to unmute, you can do that too, of just where you would like us to see. What do you want to know more about? From your perspective, your role that you serve, and the folks in your network that maybe is like, or hey, we're doing this really, really well, and I don't have time to talk about it today, but I'd love to share it. Put that in the chat, because I know Dr. Hargis is doing some work with pathway work. And there's a lot of things going on, but I would love for us to get a good grasp on where we're going with it. And if we can get some alignment with that, in along with our human skills, that we're building good quality humans who are employable and can manage all these changes and switcheroos in life on advancing technology, how do we get that all aligned so it's meaningful and there's not these one-off pieces? So I would love for you to drop that in. I don't have the answers to all that, but you guys always give us a lot to chew on, and really help us beat the pavement to find the experts, to find the people. Caroline, please feel free to drop your thoughts in that chat too. That is not exclusive to just members, because we want to think strategically about this. And everybody always asks me when I speak nationally about our work in Kentucky, the number one question I get is, how do you all get all those people to come to the table when they're not required? And I said, because it's the right work to do together. And normally we wouldn't all be in the same room, whether that's Zoom or actually in person. And so there is so much power in this Zoom room, with influence and with networking, that brings different perspectives that can make us really powerful, and really moving towards change. And I think we're not starting at the very beginning. I think we have a lot of great things already happening. So I would just love for you to drop that in. I do want to use the last few minutes before we wrap up. Is there any specific legislation that you wanted to know about, or Commissioner Fletcher or Dr. Thompson, that you all wanted to elevate and make people aware of, or is everybody's session sleepy? And that's okay too, because you're going to get the massive PowerPoint with all the bills that passed, that pertain to our focus areas. And if we've missed something, send us an email and we'll add it. But I know that that can be very tedious going through 24 slides. But if there's anything in particular you would like to know about, or clarify, please unmute, ask us, and we will do our best to answer, or somebody on this call will know, I feel.
So I want to ask Aaron a question about Kia, or someone on the call about Kia, and about the cut in funding to general education courses.
Yeah, I think Joe Carroll's on too.
I just got the email with the CPE report on dual credit, and showing the significant difference in the going to college rate between students who, complete dual credit compared to those that don't. And I just wanted to know, what can we do to prepare for the next legislative session to see that cut to dual credit funding does not continue?
I would say make your voices heard. I mean, for lack of any other advice, I think probably the report that CPE came out with was timely, maybe a few days late. I don't know that would have made any difference in what ultimately happened with the budget. Of course, the budget numbers were tight all the way around as far as the student financial aid funding and what was available from the lottery. So at the end of the day, we hated for it to happen. We hated to lose the one dual credit course for this upcoming year. The budget amount is the same for the second year of the biennium, and we will
look again at utilization and what we think, if there's any additional resources anywhere else among the other programs, after we see all the numbers come in for this fall, to see if we will need to do the same course of action for next academic year. So,
Thank
you
you.
know, it's just let people know that it matters and makes a difference, and obviously causes a lot of headaches for this upcoming academic year for schools that are planning schedules and calendars and faculty and the whole nine yards.
Jenny, I can't say it any better than Joe Carroll. I mean, everybody knew the results of dual credit. Just wasn't this report. We've got every year, it's been showing this. Uh, we were a little disappointed, no doubt. The thing I'm worried about now, since we are where we're at, I think several things, and I think our districts as well as our campuses, and Dr. Neal, especially KCTCS, that supplies so many, we have to be strategic. I mean, that's why it's more important to make sure these courses are lined up with a path, a degree path, or a path to get out, because the extra is not going to be there. Do I think we'll see our numbers go down a little bit? I do, but I expect we were pacing well. I'll just say we were really pacing. The part that's a little problematic to me is that, our campuses have always been willing, even when the scholarships ran out, is to do work with our districts at low cost, and in some cases, no cost. I think that'll still be there, but I think I would hope that they would work closer, Jenny, with your folk, with you guys at U of L or whomever, JCTC, to really think about how we want to utilize this, maybe not as a free for all, as been the case often, Joe Carroll, as you well know, but a much more strategic, deliberative process. And I think Amanda and our folk are really needing to probably double down now on that more than ever. And how can we create some of these more formal ways of thinking about having students go into these courses in a way that we make sure that some students aren't left out? Because I always get afraid that our under-resourced students come in late, and even in the past, and weren't able to get it because we've always kind of ran out of money, Joe Carroll. You just found it in other places, whether it's the work ready, dual credit, or whatever. So that's been the case for a while. But clearly, though, I think it's going to take the commissioner, myself, and a lot of other folks to double down on this in our next budget session, because it's really too important to lose this kind of momentum we've created.
Thank you. I mean, I think we are already seeing, as we go out and visit schools, we're seeing our schools that have less free and reduced lunch students say, we're not really concerned about that. We think our families will still continue to take the same number of dual credit students, dual credit courses. And then at our more, lower income, high free and reduced lunch schools, we're hearing, counselors say, well, these students, might have to drop those or change their schedules up for next year.
I've started hearing that too, Jenny, and before we've even done any strategic work. So I hope that doesn't become the mantra. I hope we even go a little bit farther and say, let's make sure that those young people that could never afford it or had a hard time affording it get in on some of these scholarships earlier, right? Because my kids who taken dual credit, I end up paying for those things because it was just too important, because it saved me on the back end. Right. So, but not all kids fall in the category where my family falls in.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions before?
Along those same lines, the funding for AP tests have also been cut. We still have, I think, $1 million in for those that are students that are free and reduced lunch, but I think it was somewhere around 2.5 million, something like that, was cut to help those students that to take AP tests.
I did not realize that that fund also had gotten cut, Commissioner. I didn't realize that.
I didn't know that either. Thank you,
I
Commissioner.
didn't either.
Joe Carroll,
Unless
also the Keys money was
Oh,
restored, but they raised the eligibility, right? How many students will that impact in a typical graduating class?
Right. So there is temporary budget language which raises the minimum GPA to earn an award during a year in high school to 2.75, beginning with 26-27. So we're running some numbers to see when we've looked at this previously, when legislators have asked about trying to save money in keys, at the end of the day, it's smaller award amounts, lesser number of students. It's not a big amount of money. But we are working on trying to come up with that data and some comparative data for them to consider, in the hopes that this temporary budget language doesn't become ongoing or permanent. But that's also on the list of things to deal with for the next legislative session.
Yeah, good question, Jim.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the cutoff of that GPA, who does that harm the most? Who does that take money away from? Well, it takes away those are typically your lower income students, typically your minority students, typically students who probably don't get other, in quotes, scholarships. So, we don't like it. But we'll see what happens as we proceed.
Yeah. Well, we are at time. Well, 1 minute away. We will send this to you, but if there are any additional questions, Joe Carroll, thank you for taking those questions. I know there's been a lot around the funding and scholarship, and that's very near and dear to our hearts in Kentucky. Yeah, I don't think people realize what a gift it is, because so many states have nothing like what we offer. So it really is an incredible opportunity, and we hate to see any of it cut or any students impacted. I really want to say thank you for the conversation today. This is just the beginning. I've gotten really inspired and a little challenged on what we talked about, because I'm so out of my comfort zone, which is a good thing to really dig in and pick your all's brains about where we go with AI and the essential skills. I also don't want to overlook Macy. She is probably on her last meeting. She is getting ready to graduate. And Macy has served as our student representative this year, but she also served as our CPE student rep, and she has been the president of the student government at U of L. So quite the resume to be a young woman. And I just want to say, Macy, congratulations. It has been a true pleasure working with you and learning from you. And we wish you nothing but the absolute best. So
thank you. And thank you guys all for the work that you do for everyone in the Commonwealth. I know students appreciate it, and I definitely do as well. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Well, we will be in touch as a follow-up if you're interested in getting engaged with the community and parent engagement. We'll be reaching out to those groups you all suggested, and we'll be asking for your feedback on AI and the essential skill alignment all the way down to pre-K. Get excited, y'all. We won't get back together in August, but a lot of work's going to happen between now and then. And thank you for being you, and have a great afternoon.
Yes, have a good one, Macy. I'll see you around. Thank you.
Yes.
Students
Thank
love
you.
you.